So here is the important question. Is it possible to build a wildly successful and thriving business without grinding, instead with ease? And if yes, how do you go about it? What do you need to do? This is the topic that I'm going to discuss and much more, of course, I believe, with today's guest that I'm very, very excited to be talking with. Her name is Alyssa, and Alyssa is an expert in holistic business growth for healers, holistic health practitioners, and spiritual coaches. Alyssa is the founder of Integrative Wellness Journeys, where she empowers her clients to scale their impact while staying aligned with their values with her signature program, Rise Group Coaching. With a unique blend of strategic insight and soulful guidance, very important, Alyssa helps entrepreneurs to find their vision, create magnetic messaging, and build a business that not only thrives, but also allows space for self-care and creativity. Her work is all about balancing growth with ease. Like I said, is it possible? If yes, then how you do it? And this is From Grind to Grace. This is a podcast for the alternative entrepreneur, or the entrepreneur who just doesn't want to give up, even if she or he is struggling. However, she refuses to do the thing the way everyone else is doing just because everyone else is doing that way. And so now I want to welcome Alyssa. Please join me in this conversation. I know you have a lot to say on this topic. I followed you. I binge watched your stuff. So, as I understand, you mostly live on Instagram, right? And your channel is full of greatness that I really love. Your energy is amazing, and you just radiate this amazing possibility, inspiring. So that's what I'm telling my audience about, on top of the intro that I just read that you sent. So I'm very, very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that personalized introduction. That's always so, flattering, right? To know that the content is helpful, and giving that inspiration, because that's absolutely, what it takes to be a leader, right? As an entrepreneur, I believe that each of us are leaders. And when we are spiritual entrepreneurs, really what that means to me is that we are purpose driven, that we are understanding that we are part of a bigger web of life and
Mhm.
consciousness. And we know that by doing the work that we're doing is making a huge impact on the planet, on the collective, on
Mm.
the evolution, right, of humanity. And I know I'm getting a little dramatic here with this, but it really is that important. And that is why I believe it's so important, and why I realize that my soul, right, has really like been down this path and brought me to where I am right now, which is how to bridge that gap between these people who are here to make such a difference in this world and actually reaching those who they're meant to work with. And the problem is there's so much noise out there in the online space. I mean, like, so much, right, that we get distracted, and what we actually have to do to achieve what it is that we want gets so diluted in fluff. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like, I mean, and if we think about like modern day, where people are getting their information from, it probably is Instagram, it probably is YouTube, it probably is in these free Facebook groups that they're joining, right? And And yes, like there is always like that end purpose, right? Of when creators are creating content to make a sale,
Mm,
right? To convert into a client. And this is where I think things also can get a little messy because when we are purpose driven, heart centered entrepreneurs, we can almost feel icky in doing that, right? We can almost feel icky in that transaction that happens
mhm.
when really it's an exchange of energy.
Yeah.
So I believe part of my work as having been a healer, right? Having been a holistic healing practitioner, my background is in exercise science. I have a master's in kinesiology. I was in health and wellness for 15 years, corporate health coaching, right? All of that stuff. That's where I began. And then after I started my business, got into, energy healing, teaching energy healing certification programs, like all of these things, I really started to understand that there's a big disconnect there, right? And there's a lot of, dare I say, reprogramming, right? Like rewriting the script,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
And
anyway, I'll pause.
and I was gonna ask you about your story, so maybe we can expand on that as well. But also, I think you said something very important as well. So, and we just chatted just before, I pressed record about the mainstream versus the other side of things in terms of personal development and even the way people do business. And I think there's a whole group of people longing something bigger than just creating an income, right? Substituting their job. And I think there's a huge, massive group of people who kind of know that this is not enough for them. They want to contribute to this collective energy and growth and evolution, whatever, but yet don't quite actually know what it is or how to do it or what it looks like. And I'm speaking from my experience as well. Like for a long time, I knew I was an entrepreneur. I learned all the strategies, but something was off. I knew it until something happened. But this is about you, and I would like to hear a bit about how you got to this, to seeing that, to understanding that, and knowing that, you know what, this is not enough. We gotta do more. And the real entrepreneurs, the alternative entrepreneurs, they are also thinking about the collective.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. So the first thing that really comes to mind as you say that is something that I just wrote. I don't remember where I wrote it, if it was in a post or a story or what it was, but it was from an experience that I actually just had yesterday and have continuously had that I'll kind of come back to. It's part of my origin story. And that is the biggest breakthroughs come from the biggest breakdowns, which to me
Mm,
means that we are constantly growing and evolving, right, as human beings, especially as spiritual human beings. And it is through that journey, through the struggles that we go through the traumas, big T, little t, even that we experienced, and just all of these things. And it's how we get to the other side that helps to propel us forward in terms of the direction that we need to go for our highest good, right? So for me, I started in, like I mentioned, health and wellness. I was always really interested in psychology and movement, specifically
mm,
how movement improves our well-being, our mental health, our physical health, right? Like exercise, if you look it up, and I did write a course on exercise is medicine when I taught when I taught undergrad. Exercise is like the closest thing to a magic bullet, right? For again, like literally anything and everything. So integrating the psychology with the movement and realizing that like this is how I wanted to help people. This is the gift that I have because I've always been the person who inspires others, who, people see as positive and helps them feel good about themselves and things like that. Like this is just who I am, right? So it felt really good to be bringing this medicine into the world And then what happened was I got caught in the current of 3D, the collective, like whatever, right? Corporate America, AKA. And in doing so, first of all, just say, again, it was like a great experience, and you go through all of it because you need to, right? And going through having the 5-year corporate experience, working up to management, all of that stuff was really helpful in helping me see and understand how business works and shouldn't work, by the way.
Exactly.
Right? I got to, go deeper into different realms within health and wellness. I got to learn so much. And then what ended up happening was, again, you grow through what you go through, right? So during my undergrad into grad school, I started having anxiety attacks, panic attacks. Now, I was a healthy young 20 something year old. Okay, I may have drank too much and smoked cigarettes a bit here and there, right, at the time, but exercise, healthy eating, like I was in that culture. Yet my blood pressure was super high. Yeah, and I started having these panic attacks, which I thought was a stroke. Like, literally thought I was having a stroke the first time it happened to me. And when it happened, I'm also this type of person who, when I go through something, I talk to everybody about it. Anyone who will listen to me. I'm like, "Oh my God, this happened, blah, 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 blah." And what happened, I was amazed by this, was all of these, especially women, really, I think probably 100% were women, had experienced a panic attack before. And when I described what happened, they were like, "Oh, yeah, no, I know that's happened to me or it happens to me or whatever." I'm like, I've never heard of this before. Nobody's talking about this. Obviously, it happens a lot more and I think is a lot more talked about
It's
nowadays.
almost normalized the way you're
It's
telling
almost
now.
it's almost normalized. It's almost, so this was before, this is, I'm dating myself now, right?
Right.
So what happened was I ended up finding a natural approach to managing that. That's when I got into mindfulness and meditation and breathing and started going down like the consciousness rabbit hole.
Mhm.
And during this whole time, while I was in corporate, that was when I started getting into energy healing. Somebody I worked with, a fellow health coach, was a Reiki master teacher. So she taught me Reiki. And then I got to this point in my career where the company I was working for was going bankrupt. And I had to decide, do I want to stay in corporate wellness, which isn't easy. Like, it's not, there's only so many, right, companies that do this type of work, especially remotely, right? And I didn't want to relocate. We had already bought a house and settled and all of that stuff. So I decided, I'm like, you know what? When I was in college and everything, I owned a business. Like, I did personal training and things like that. Like, I understand what that being a business owner, being an entrepreneur didn't mean I was just going to get to coach people, but it meant that I was going to be creating marketing, business, doing business related things and all of that stuff. And that really excited me because I'm a multi-passionate person, and a lot of I think there is a type, like, entrepreneur is a type, right? And we love it. Like, we love the variety, we love the autonomy, we love that we get to create and also make the decisions, which obviously all of this comes with the other side of it, the other end of the spectrum, right? But for the most part, I was really excited to go down this journey. So anyway, long story short, after doing that for about 5 years, 4 or 5 years, then I started to naturally find that I was, first of all, leaning more into the energy healing and the raising consciousness and the healing things from a holistic perspective, right? From really embodying the beliefs that we need to, and helping people understand their own energy and work with their energy. And then I was teaching more and more, like, teaching and certifying other practitioners was becoming more the norm for me. And what naturally started happening was I was starting to help people start their businesses. Like, I had learned
Mm.
and dug through and tried and failed at, right? Like, so many different things, that I became a great person to help these people with figuring out, like, the skills of a coach, right? Being able to help people identify and see their own truth, and the kind of consultant aspect of having the knowledge I have and the experiences that I have. And not only that, but also the experience and knowledge of being a practitioner, you know, and like understanding what it means to be an integrative and
Mhm.
holistic health healer and what's actually necessary in order to actualize your dreams, right? And to actually have things come in. And then I love to incorporate and pull in human design as an element too, so that people
What is your
understand.
human design?
I'm
What
a
is it?
fi- I'm
Sorry?
a f- I'm a 5-1 splenic manifester.
Okay, I'm manifesting generator.
Yeah, yeah. And human design, and there are many aspects to it, right? Like it's actually
Yeah.
very, very complicated. And I am not
Mm-hmm.
a certified reader. I am an enthusiast. Okay. So I've done lots of reading and learning and studying and all of that stuff, but and mostly just looking through the lens of how can we apply this as entrepreneurs so that we can work as much as possible in alignment with our own flow. And this is what the problem is, and this is coming back to your intro, is that there's no one size fits all approach. There is no one single blueprint that's going to help every single individual. So, the best strategy that anybody can enforce when they're trying to grow their businesses and become successful and not grind anymore, right? And find more ease with things is to know yourself. To know
Mm-hmm.
yourself, to connect more deeply with your intuition, with the energy of your purpose and what you're doing here, and once you know that, then the rest actually becomes like
Yes.
really easy, like
Yeah.
stupid easy.
I know, right? And it's hard to believe, right? So what you were saying about, your spiritual path and the rabbit hole, I knew that stuff. I had very powerful experiences years and years and years before I started this business, before I became an entrepreneur. But for whatever reason, when I became an entrepreneur, that my spiritual stuff was somehow separate from how I was running my business and how I was
Mm,
learning all the strategies, all the frameworks. I became very good at them, right? But I was grinding like crazy, and it's never enough, right? It's never bleeding enough. When you
mm.
so what did it look like for you when you started, when you realized, okay, you know what, I'm doing business? And were you affected at all by this external knowledge, external truth, their truth, and the need to learn the marketing properly and stuff like that?
1,000% yes. A
Yeah.
1,000% yes. Yeah. And this is the thing. And any healer, or person knows this, that, in this space, right? That just because we know something, right, doesn't mean that we don't still fall into those traps, right? Like,
Mhm.
just like I would say to a client, right? Oh, like mirroring maybe how their behavior is incongruent with what it is that they desire. When you're on the inside of it, you just don't see it. So, and at the same time, again, like this is part, I believe, of what makes me a good business coach as well. The fact that I did go down all those rabbit holes and I did learn the lesson yet again, as I do over and over again in this lifetime, of recognizing where I am pushing too hard, where I am focusing too much, and where I am leaning too much into the masculine energy, because I do
Mhm.
have a lot of masculine energy inherently, and not enough leaning into the flow. So, what was the question again? I just got off on a tangent.
When you first started on your business,
Oh, yes, yes.
were you?
So,
Mhm.
right. So I would say I definitely went through this cycle and evolution within both sort of stints of my business, where the first where I was doing more health coaching and energy healing and things like that. Within that timeline, I definitely began again too much leading into that masculine, too much overdoing. And then I finally eventually learned, the more that I got deeper into my spiritual path, how I was not allowing in enough. And this is when I started healing like relationship with money, wounds, and poverty consciousness and lack mentality. And that's when I started to really learn and embody and encompass all of that. And then when I shifted into business coaching, which was over a year and a half ago now, I fell into the same cycle again. Because then through my training, because I am certified, through my training, I learned even more than the stacks of books that I've read and courses I've done and programs I've done and masterminds
Right.
I've been in and coaches I've had, right? So then learning all of that, I definitely got back into that mentality of I need to do all of these things in order to be successful. And if I don't, nothing is going to be coming in. And then another layer came on of, well, if I don't succeed in doing this, then what am I doing as a business coach?
Mhm.
Right? What am I doing as if this isn't even working for me, then who am I? Right? So that all took a lot of love
Yeah,
for myself.
okay.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, and this is a very good topic, and I don't think I've ever talked about this with any of the guests so far. That thing when we haven't got that result ourselves, now we are coaching these other people, which it's a limiting belief. Now, why and what to do about it? What could you say?
Mm.
And one example, okay, one example when I hear that, the sports coach, like say a basketball coach. So in Lithuania, like Lithuania is a basketball country, and I don't know any, what do you call it, basketball coaches that have ever been played themselves at the Olympics, whereas their teams do all the time. Lithuanians are at the Olympics every time. So why is that?
So are you asking why do coaches get that imposter
Okay, so
syndrome?
why did you get into that trap, and why is it just a trap where you thought, what, if my business is like this, if it's a mess or whatever, how can I be a good coach, a good business coach?
Yeah. So it's a very, I believe, natural, right? Thought to have because we are heart-centered. We do value, and speaking for myself too, right? But I know all other heart-centered entrepreneurs as well. We really value other people's investments in us. And we really want to do a good job. And we really want to produce, do what we say we're going to do, right?
Mhm.
And the fear of failure and what that looks like can be so scary, right? Like that could stop us dead in our tracks, and it can also keep us safe, right? Like that we can self-sabotage in getting into this mind loop and mind drama of not being good enough or not being able to do this because XYZ, right? Because there may also be a fear of failure, a fear of stepping into your power. And this is a can of worms, right? There are so many places that could be coming from. And this is why I believe it's so important to have coaches, to have mentors, to have safe spaces where we can work through when these beliefs begin to arise so that we can look at it and
Mhm.
basically ask ourselves two questions. Like this is what I say to my clients, right? Like is it something like what would it look like for somebody to be able to teach that or do that or whatever, right? And what do you have to do to be that person? So do you feel like you even though you haven't done that yourself, maybe you haven't had 10K months yourself, but you're saying that in your copy or something like that, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend. You know what I mean? But like if you were doing something, I would ask like, well, as long as somebody has the ability to do it or they've helped others do it before or something like that, right? Then okay, well, you know that you are able to do that. But if you look at that and you say, well, this is what I believe, then I would say, well, what do you have to do to do that? So do you have to, okay, go get your first 10K month, or go shift how you're putting yourself out there so that it is in a way that you feel confident in
Mhm.
doing, right? So basically, it comes down to two things. And this is what I would always even say to my healing clients back when I did that, which was, is it something that you need to shift your perspective on? Do you need to think about it differently? Do you need to look about it at it differently? Or do you need to do something differently? Is there a change that actually does need to be made? And that change might be internal, that might be a belief that you have to shift, or that might be external. Again, like changing your messaging or changing your target audience, right? Or whatever that is. So that confidence in being able to produce that result, there's not a one size fits all answer to that either, right? Because it really depends on the individual and on the situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it actually goes the other way as well. Like sometimes we see successful people every day who are scared to death
Yes.
of doing this and that and selling and coaching and leading and all sorts of things. And we look at them like, why the hell are they afraid or scared? But they are. Yeah, it's human.
Everybody is. Everybody is. And that's why I try to share vulnerably on in my content about this, because it's real. It is a very real thing, and we need to normalize that it exists as much as we need to normalize that there is an other side to it, and that even though it can be scary and even though there can be these things, like, you can still experience that success. And it also goes to show that within any level of quote unquote success, there are still those that like monkey on your back, there's still
Mhm.
those things that are like not enough, not good enough, or this or that, or whatever, or like have that fear, which is why it's so important to give ourselves the space and the energy to work through these things as they arise. And this is why being an entrepreneur is a spiritual experience. Being an entrepreneur puts you in a position where you are constantly being triggered because of disappointment, because of these fears, because of this confidence stuff, the worthiness, charging enough, but like all of these things come up when they may not otherwise have the opportunity. So when you're an entrepreneur, having space to look at yourself and do the inner work is absolutely necessary for your growth.
Yeah, and you just said another keyword that I want to sort of have a chat about: inner work. What does that even mean? Because as you know, right, that in our industry, basically all entrepreneurs, they understand they need to work on their mindset. They need to get into personal development. There's no other way. However, a lot of that personal development now that I see that way, it's more about convincing yourself that you're not afraid. No, I'm not afraid. No, I can do this. I can do this outreach. I shouldn't be afraid. Oh crap, I'm afraid. So I'm beating myself up now. I told myself in the morning I'll send 5 messages, and then by lunch I haven't sent a single, so it's more like pushing, forcing, convincing yourself, I can do this, I can do this. And clearly, I mean, that got me to some place, but it was not enough. And what I'm seeing is that a lot of people are still stuck in that space where that inner work is mostly about convincing your ego.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so manifestations don't work. Now, why the hell is I'm manifesting, it's not working apparently. And you said that word reprogramming in the beginning, apparently my body doesn't agree, with whatever I am trying to manifest and things like that. So do you see that as well? Like this, what I say, mainstream personal development is not enough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's one of those things, right? And I saw this a lot when I was in the healing, more in the healing industry versus the business coaching industry. And that is that we can spiritually bypass, we can emotionally bypass, we can be toxically positive, right? And have the best intentions when really what we're doing is putting a mask on, right? And we are continuing to bury and hide and say it's not safe to feel those feelings or look at those thoughts, right? We're so scared that we're going to identify with those thoughts or those feelings that we don't ever end up processing them. And that's a problem, right? So we really have to look at it. We have to be in coming from the most authentic perspective when it comes to doing that, inner work, right? As we say, meaning it can't be to get a result. So you can't go into doing inner work with the result of making 10K months, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna subconsciously reprogram myself into this, like this is my problem and this and that and all of that stuff. But you need to, this is my opinion anyway, you need to come from it from a place of I need to shed this conditioning. I need to come into alignment with my most authentic self, with the highest expression of myself, so that I can be the most magnetic, so that I can raise my frequency to the degree that it needs to in order to make the biggest change in this world, right? Or that might be the biggest change for you, for your mental health or for your family. There's a whole, and I
Mm.
know you're a mom too, right? Like there's a whole, our generation is this insane like sandwich of other generations where we're like doing all of this generational work and helping our kids and like all of this stuff. So again, getting off on a tangent again, but bottom line, right, what I'm saying is that in order to do that inner work in a way that isn't perpetuating the problem and just
Mhm.
almost creating more damage, or it can potentially, if nothing else, it'll prevent you from moving forward, leading to frustration and possibly, uh, I don't want to say failure, but abandonment of your dreams and goals because you're thinking, oh, I'm saying the affirmations and I'm doing
Mhm.
the coursework and, all of these things, but like, hello, nothing's happening. Well, what are you really learning from that? Nothing. I
Mhm.
think that affirmations and all of the work has its place, but like anything else, it loses the context of everything else. You know what I mean? This is why I'm a holistic business coach because I believe it's important to look within each of these
Mhm.
dimensions of our being, right? When we are creating the best path forward. So it is so important. And I mean, there's no one perfect tool either, right? Like there's no one perfect modality or way to do that shadow work or inner work. And this is again where it's important for the individual to allow themselves to follow their body, follow their gut, follow their intuition to what is going to be the most helpful for them. And I will say for me, over the many years that I've been doing this, there have been different times where different modalities are needed, where different things help me get to where I need to go. So also be okay with shifting and changing. Maybe you've been
Mhm.
doing EFT tapping for the last couple years and it really worked, but now you're at a new block and that isn't working anymore. Okay, well, guess what? There are billions of other tools and modalities and things that we can use to help us, but we have to first start to look in and ask ourselves what we
Mhm.
need.
I think it's so important to understand that context that you mentioned. I think that's exactly what's lacking in that mainstream personal development. I mean, they talk about manifestation affirmations and the science of getting rich, and it all sounds good and cool and all that kind of stuff. But it all sort of sounds like almost like magic, right? It's almost like if you keep repeating this thing every day, magic is gonna happen. Whereas I think it's important to understand why and how that happens. It's no longer magic, really, right? So when you include that context, okay, so I'm a part of this world, I'm part of this world, this universe, I'm one with this thing, and these things work this way, and that's how, and that's why, and that's what I need to do now. And that's not explained, and that was the missing link for me
Mm.
personally when it comes to business. I could not see that context. So I was obviously very happy to discover the whole thing. And and I knew that in life, right?
Oh, I know.
I
I
mean,
know. I know. Exactly. That's why, yeah, we have to laugh at ourselves, because it's so true. You're like, oh, like if I honestly, like, this is why I always preach going back to basics and going back to the foundations, because truly we get lost in the weeds. We get lost in the details. We get lost as we, get disconnected from that bigger picture and remember that, like, oh, yeah, I learned this already. Oh, yeah, this lesson,
yes,
right? There's that again. It's honestly, it's fun. You
it's
kinda have to
almost
laugh. You have to
it's
laugh.
almost every day. And I was actually even telling my client just the other day that, why do you keep looking to create everything from scratch? Every time I give you a task or ask you, do you know that we already have all of this, your assets and everything. We keep looking for something else and something different to create a new thing where we actually already know, so.
And there's that self-sabotage again, right? There's that falling into those cycles because there's a fear there of what happens once they actually do succeed. Is it fear of being too busy? Is it fear of being successful? Fear of being seen,
Mhm,
right? Like that's when like we don't even see like just recently sharing on a personal note that, I recently found a block where I hadn't been able to move past a certain level because I didn't trust others to help me. And because I didn't trust others to help me,
mhm,
I didn't want more work because more work would be too busy. And I don't want to be too busy because I value time and space and freedom. So it was like all of these things intertwined where I have everything, more than anything and everything that I need, right?
mhm,
It's a matter of being consistent and tracking and seeing what works and doing more of that and not getting so caught up like you said in creating new things or creating content or doing busy work busy
mhm,
work because busy is comfortable and when we're busy we don't have to feel and if we're busy doing this right and sometimes we even want something to complain about because we're right and these are not conscious things we're not like oh man I really want to keep myself small and busy and right but if this is why the human brain body energy web of consciousness is just it's so much.
I know, right? But come on, what are you saying? It's business. It's gotta be busy,
Yeah,
right?
right,
Right.
right.
Everyone is doing this. Everyone is busy. Everyone keeps posting. What was gonna say a shitload. Well, there I said it's of content everywhere, omnipresent, and that kind of stuff. Tactics, 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 tactics. And it's so hard for me. There was misalignment I could feel between I thought what it needs to be and somewhere deep down what the higher me knew what it needs to be, and it was just in front of me all the time. When it clicked, it clicked. I was like, oh my God, what happened? All this time I didn't even know, I didn't see. So that's very common. I wish more people understood the energy and the frequency, the word that you mentioned. And that when you get into that, it drives everything, right?
It
And
does.
yeah.
It does. You become in a place where you're floating down a river versus trying to swim upstream. You literally do ride that current and just go into that flow where I don't want to say effortless because I think that's also not realistic, right? Like there is always going to be action and some effort. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be overly effortful, right? It can be easeful. And that's the other thing too, because I think that things can get caught in the other direction, just like we can overwork and overdo and keep ourselves busy. There's the other end of the spectrum of those who are just trying to meditate their way into success, and think if they just sit and work on their frequency and their vibration enough and don't realize that they also need to take action when they feel that spark, right? It's
Yeah,
that
so I guess
yin and
there's
yang.
this creation piece and then there's implementation piece where you have to, you still need to implement, do the thing. However, there are other ways like
Exactly.
delegation,
Right.
whatever.
Yes.
Zone of genius, like if somebody else
Mm,
like that thing better than you know, all sorts of things, right? But I think the most important thing for, I want my listener to hear that it's the energy work,
mm.
you know, and it helps you with everything. And so why do you think it, or is there, how do I ask this question? Is there one main reason or tendency or pattern why people get into this grind loop?
No, I don't think that there is one. I think that there, again, are several ways that people can get into that. Speaking specifically from the perspective of like female entrepreneurs, we're going to see a lot of people pleasing tendencies, perfectionist tendencies, even neurodivergence, right? Like even just certain ADHD
Mm-hmm.
and autism spectrum, like all of these things that are going to influence the way that we operate, and many who are divergent from a certain type, right, are going to be feel like they're working against what excuse me, let me reframe that. They've been taught to do things a certain way that is supposed to fit for everyone. So
Yeah,
their whole life they've been used to trying to do things in a way that doesn't feel aligned to them, right? So I believe that just when we have those that conditioning, I should say, right, around
yeah,
what we have to do to be good, quote unquote, or to be um, enough, right, or
mhm.
worthy, that can just present
Yeah.
itself in so many ways.
Yeah, I think, and a big piece of for me was to understand that my self-worth does not depend on any external validation. And you know, like I valued myself based on how I thought others valued me, but they tended to value me, like in theory, better than I saw myself. It's crazy stuff, right?
I relate to that too. Yeah, yeah, I've had to grow through that as well and continue to. And this is again where I think every time we get to that point of tension, right? Because we're always expanding and contracting and expanding contraction. When we get to that point of tension, when we're in contraction, is when we see those lessons reemerge, when we see those old patterns reemerge. And we have to look at that and again see like how is this presenting itself again, right? So having that continuous time for self-reflection, for seeing like where do I want to be, where am I now, and how do I feel about my progress, right? And and just doing that work, right?
What could you say to somebody who is stuck in the grind and she knows and she feels that it shouldn't be that way, but she's scared to change anything because she might think, okay, oh my God, I gotta start again, or I gotta change something and it's not gonna work out because change is scary, right? However, like I like saying, you know, the grind is a symptom of something being off and also the reason for being stuck, you know, not getting the results. So how can they start getting out of that loop?
mm. So how can this individual get out of the loop of, can you
Okay,
repeat that again? Yeah.
let me give you an example. Okay, so let's say, so I realized, or I at some point I realized, okay, I'm grinding way too much. It needs to be, or it could be easier. I feel it could be easier. However, what does that mean? Changing
Mm,
things? Doing things differently? How do I know that it's gonna work out that way? Oh, they tell me I need to flow, it needs to flow. So now what do? I don't sit at my laptop, I go for a walk. Well, you know, like who's gonna do the work? You know, that kind of
mm.
stuff. How,
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, what I think is really important to look at from there, from that perspective, from what you just described, is first, what is telling you that you need to do that thing? Where is that information coming from? Because most of the time, if it's what you just described with feeling like you're grinding, but not doing this or doing this, but should you do this, right? Type of situation is when we are in our head about it, when we are trying to be too logical and think about it or rationalize why we're doing something, that is usually a sign that there is a deeper rooted thing going on that needs to be looked at, right? Like for me, like I mentioned, part of, what was, I was in this block where I was feeling like I had all these things to always get done and be so busy, yet I want this growth and all of these things. And I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but like, why isn't it working? And that sort of thing. It was through working through that with the coach that I was able to see how I was keeping
Mhm.
myself there because of that, not being able to trust others and being afraid of getting too much work and things like that. So once you find that core reason, then you can have clarity around what you actually have to do forward. So once I had that removed and once I could see that, it freed up energy. It freed up energy and it
Mhm.
created more space for the solution to come in. Because energy, and this is why having my background in energy healing has been so helpful with all this, like you described too, right? Just that whole spiritual background and being able to understand how it fits in with the web of business because it's all the same. Like it's all the same.
Yes.
So basically in your when you're doing energy healing, for example, you never just, like you can't just put good energy in, you know what I mean? And you can't just take bad energy out. There's
Mm.
always first a grounding and then a releasing of the energy that is not matching the vibration of your
Yeah.
highest good, right? Or is too dense or creating illness or dis-ease or whatever that thing is. But then the second part of that process is then refilling yourself or the client up with higher vibration life force energy, with universal life force energy, with what I always call the energy of your authentic self or your highest self. And it's that energy that has all the intelligence that you need for all the next steps that you need to take. So since that had happened, then oh my god, like just any given moment I like all the ideas, the clarity, the this, the that, and part of that was saying no. Part of that was not doing more things but actually going back and seeing what has actually been successful already for me in the past, and the recognition that all these other things that I was trying to do was just slowing me down
Mhm.
because I was focusing on doing two things. But again, that root cause was because of that belief and those feelings. So that's that's
Yeah,
it.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. And you mentioned yet another thing, a coach. So it's very hard to achieve those things, to see those things by yourself possible. Happened to me on a few occasions, but that doesn't necessarily happen with everyone. And so having a coach, I think it's yet another important piece, right? Okay, that is very, very interesting. Lots of insights. And I'm just, it's so important for me to sort of know that my listener is hearing about energy. And that's it, a lot, such a big piece, and everything else resolves itself, like to the
Mm,
extent that rejection doesn't exist anymore. Like, I mean, when you know your truth, like when you know the thing, when you are aligned, it doesn't even matter whether somebody's gonna say yes or no. It's
right.
just like it's
There's a
irrelevant.
detachment. There's an emotional detachment from it, which is so important in a healthy way, right? In a very healthy way,
Yes,
because it's that attachment to it is is what creates the pain. Because then you have an attachment and you think if this then that. If it's a yes, then I'm good. If it's a no, then I'm not good enough, right? And it's the stories that we tell
exactly.
ourselves about those things. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot, you don't even need that training, what to do, how to deal with rejection. Well, you don't deal with rejection because it doesn't exist anymore, something like
Yeah.
that. So beautiful place to be. So anyway, I'm looking at the time. So one final question for you that I like asking is, when you hear from grind to grace, what goes through your mind? What does it mean to you?
From grind to grace. So I'm getting like visuals as I think about these words. So grind, I see like gears moving. I see labor, like laboring, like grinding, moving forward. Like it's not a smooth flow of things are just happening, but rather there is a lot of effort that is required to move forward. Whereas grace is from a place of love and from a place of compassion,
Mm,
where grace is saying, like, it's that detachment that we were just talking about, right? It's that, oh, I
mm.
would love for this to happen, but if it doesn't, I'm still a good person, or I'm still happy, or like it's still possible, or whatever that is. So I think it's very much very much from
Yeah,
grind to
that's
grace. Yeah.
beautiful. That's really, really beautiful. Thank you so much. And in general, thank you so much for being here with me, for sharing your stuff. I know you have lots of more to share. And so the very, very, very final question is, how do you help people? What do you do for them? What transformation can they receive working with you, and where can they find you?
Thank
What's
you
the
for
better?
asking. Yes. So my specialty is helping integrative healers, energy healers, holistic practitioners, and spiritual entrepreneurs who are service providers who are looking to expand their businesses in a way that creates more streams of revenue. So, more ways to make money without trading their time for money. So, maximizing their expertise, maximizing their energy. And my services is bridging the gap between where they are and that dream of being able to hold the vibration of abundance in whatever way that means to them. A lot of my clients are seeking to retire their partners, to be more present, to be able to homeschool their kids, or travel, or like do all of these things that are really important to them, and are very high value for them. Yet they don't see it as possible because they're in that mindset of it needs to be hard. This is how it is. This is what I'm doing. So what I help people do is really identify that big vision and their why, and then
Mm,
I help them to strategize what it looks like, and the steps that they need to take to get there that are aligned to them. So through this process, we are doing the deep work. Yet we are also coming back to the strategies that not only do we know are helpful, right, and proven, but they also feel good to them, because there are so many ways to become more visible, to get in front of a new audience, to get to get
mhm,
new people's eyes on you, and there are many ways to nurture them and to convert them from just being a watcher, right, and a fan, to actually making a purchase from you, which is where you can make the biggest impact. It's through that sale that you are able to deliver the transformation that you're really here to bring people through. So helping them through that framework, and then to really strategize the growth and scaling of all of that. So a lot of my clients will come having been doing one-on-one sessions and want to branch out into things like creating a course or a signature program or something like that, and stop doing the things that they don't really like anymore. Stop taking clients at 9 o'clock at night, or on weekends or whatever, when they don't want to be working then. So I really help them to embody what that vision is. And I do so primarily through my group coaching program, which is called Rise Group Coaching. And uh, Yes, so anybody can ask more about that if they would like. But I do have something that I'm happy to share with your listeners, which is a free checklist, which helps bring you through the different dimensions of your business. So a lot of the stuff that we talked about today, so that your listeners can help understand where their gaps currently are, so that they know where to focus in terms of their own growth.
Oh, that's amazing. And so I'm gonna put the links in the show notes. As usual, I want to encourage everyone to benefit from that. Just go and check it out. That's amazing. And you live mostly on Instagram, right? So
That's correct.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So I'll add your Instagram handle in the show notes as well. And again, thank you so much. So interesting, so inspiring. Loved having you with me. And we'll stay in touch. And the listener, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully it was useful, and please come back and please share, please spread the words. Let's spread the words together, and talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you.